Today I'm joined by Stephen, better known as in the gaming world as Akalon, and on YouTube as StephanZA. He's an avid gamer and a sharp podcaster who's had enough of watching leftist political narratives, often riddled with factual errors, seep into the gaming space. Instead of sitting quietly, Stephen has decided to push back and by making videos that expose the real situation in South Africa, cutting through the noise with facts and straight talk. In this episode, we cover the basics of a serious and controversial topic, which seems to be a hot potato for many, whether South Africa is on the path to genocide. And this is just the beginning. Stephen will be back for more as we unpack deeper layers into future discussions. Welcome, Stephen. Here we go. You released a video a little while ago discussing the fact that there's genocide in South Africa.
Yes.
And one of the things that, and I agree there is, one of the things that you did was you tried to present it from a slightly different angle to try and get people to understand it better. And that's what I liked about that's what got my attention about your videos is the fact that you try to present it from a different angle to get people to understand it a bit better. You know, they say that one of the questions that I sent you as well is how would we define genocide? Although genocide is, if you let's just look at the 10 stages, for example. You have your classification, your symbolization, discrimination, dehumanization, organization, polarization, preparation, persecution, extermination, and denial. Now, this is where a lot of people have been bouncing back and forth. We've had Rob Hersoff in a couple of his videos go from stage 6 to stage 8, then to stage 7. So what really bugs me is that some of them have been bouncing around a little way too much. And this also sort of does create a bit of that people can't decide.
Confusion.
Confusion. Is it actually happening or is it not happening? And the thing for me is that it is happening. If we look at specifically the 142 race-based laws, for example.
145. But
actually, it's changed since the last time I checked. It's actually
the problem is that there's also a lot of laws in South Africa that is ambiguous enough and applied in such a way that they are also race-based laws, even though they don't necessarily explicitly state race as a factor. So
because I see if I go to the IR site now, I see there's since 1910. If you look at since 1910, we've had 324. We had 324 race-based laws. But and then after 1994, we've had 122 added.
And
we're sitting now currently at 145. Which is crazy. But yes, tell me something. What got you into the whole thing of podcasting and starting to expose the truth about what's going on in South Africa? What got you into the whole?
I'd say very accidentally. I've been a YouTuber for probably 8-9 years now. At this point, I originally covered video games, right? World of Warcraft, very specifically. Through this, I sort of got involved in the culture war a little bit because for some of the people that's listening that might know nothing about gaming, there is a massive war happening within video games between the left and the right, between those who don't want this political stuff inserted into games. So that's how I got into the culture war. And then I just started seeing all of these takes from these people about my country. And I was just like, man, I'm so frustrated because people like throwing out terms. So, for example, the whole genocide term. If you're not careful, if you're not specific with what you say, you give the other side ammunition to basically make it out to sound silly. Oh, yeah, he's just claiming nonsense, so who cares? And I say, well, let's be very specific about what is actually happening in the country. Let's define what a genocide actually looks like. So, for example, people think genocide, they think hundreds of millions dead within a night. Yeah, that happens. But if you look at the stages, so another problem with the stages is people think of the stages as you first get stage 1, then stage 2, then stage 3. But that's not really how the stages work. The stages are more like a checklist of how many of these stages are currently in play. Extermination is just one type of genocide that can happen. But you absolutely get genocide. So, for example, no one would say that the Muslim genocide in China isn't happening, right?
Yeah.
Like the Chinese government is absolutely genociding the Muslim population there. I forget what their name is, but they are doing it.
The Uyghurs.
The Uyghurs. Yeah. They are currently doing it, right? Now, so the problem is when you throw out, I want to say sensationalized wording, right? And you try to make it sound super bad. It's very easy to dismiss. But when you're specific and you say, okay, hold up, we need to talk about the fact that it is racial persecution.
Yes.
If you say genocide, I'm happy to agree with that. But if someone thinks 100 million dead in a night, then no, it's not a genocide. But if you think the government has an active role that they're playing currently to get rid of white people within the country, or at least make it so hard for white people to participate in the country that they literally have to leave, then that is a genocide, right? That is exactly what it is.
If I can interject there for a second.
Of course.
There is this is also the other perception, is the fact that we have people that make excuses, for example, like with the Rwandan genocide. Now, the Rwandan genocide, about 900,000 people were killed. And I mean, in some instances, the UN soldiers were standing there watching people actively get hacked to death with pangas. And then they still came out with this excuse of, we didn't know. How would we have known? But yet, they had soldiers standing there watching it happen. And the moment it's almost as if the word genocide has got a, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like a virus. Don't touch it.
It's like don't say that word unless, of course, it's Israel and Gaza, in which case say whatever you want, right? But other than that, I think the problem with the world has always been a sort of, I believe it's the Bosnian genocide that happened, where the world was way too late in responding to it.
That's true.
You know, and then you've had other genocides where the world responded way too early. But the question is, well, they responded so early that there wasn't even a genocide. They just thought that there might be. And the question that I always bring up to these people is, well, would you rather the world responds too early and no one dies, right? Even if no one was going to die, no one dies, which is great. Or should the world wait until millions are dead, which is what happened in Rwanda, right? The world saw this coming. I mean, literally what happened in Rwanda, you had politicians saying on the radio, these people are rats, they're mice, they don't belong here, they're not part of us. You know, the same stuff that's happening in South Africa, songs being sung about killing the boer, killing the farmer. You just had a podcaster a few months ago that literally said that white people are not people. They're literally not descended from humans.
That's notable.
You know, so you've had all of these things happening, and so the world saw that coming, and in one night, this is how quickly this happens. In Rwanda, 500,000 people were killed in a single night. Right, that's how fast it happens. And in South Africa, it would happen just as fast. If you it's an age-old program that was sort of dreamed up by the Soviet Union back in the day for the ANC. It's called the Night of the Long Knives. Now, most people claim that it's no longer in effect. No one's going to do it. But the plan was that you encircle Johannesburg and then you go sort of neighborhood by neighborhood. And it would be very easy to encircle Johannesburg because basically just a few roads connect in and out. And the whole of Johannesburg is already encircled with trusts and townships. So you could kill, and there's a couple of million people that live there, right? So you could kill millions of people within a single night. Now, Johannesburg is also super liberal, so most of them don't even have guns, which means they would literally be sitting ducks, in Johannesburg. Now, again, I'm not saying that the Night of the Long Knives is still a thing, but it was a plan back in the apartheid era. It was one of the ways in which they thought that they could overthrow the apartheid government. I think, if the issue is we sit in a country with a media that is, at least in America, they have Fox, which at least presents the other side, not always truthfully, but they at least present the other side, right?
Yes, if I can speak about Fox there for a second, I've
of course.
I recently found, well, not recently, but a little while ago, found out that Fox News was actually being sponsored by the hundreds of billions of dollars from it's BlackRock, I think it is.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean,
one
Rupert that owns them.
I'm not too sure who owns them, but
it's Rupert Murdoch.
Rupert, yeah, okay,
Murdoch,
that's right.
Yes.
Yeah. The whole thing at the end of the day is that you have conditions attached to these. They had conditions attached to it, and one of the conditions was that Tucker Carlson needs to go because he started waking people up, and this is exactly what mainstream media needed: is someone to stand up and say enough is enough. And when Tucker Carlson stood up, that's when he got swept out the door, because BlackRock came in and said, here we go, we'll give you I'm not sure if it was $100 billion or $300 billion.
A lot of money.
I bet it was a lot of money.
Yeah, BlackRock has that crap ton of money. So
yeah, that they do. And then he got basically booted out, and he had to get a payoff, obviously, because they can't just cancel his contract. There's no, so he got a big payout from his contract. He would have had to. I think that's how it works over there. Otherwise, there'll be all kinds of lawsuits. So, but apologies for interjecting there. But you carry on.
No, not at all. No, my point was just at least you do have someone giving the other side, even if it is very, very censored. South Africa doesn't have that, right? The South African media landscape is full-blown left-wing. And if you understand a little bit about the South African government, they have this investment firm that is tied sort of like a sovereign wealth fund, except they invest in South African companies. So pretty much every large media conglomerate, every large company in South Africa is owned between 10 and 30% by the government, right? This investment fund. So effectively, News 24, those guys, they print what the government wants, right? The government doesn't control everything that they print, so they can't break stories. But if the government absolutely doesn't want something printed, it doesn't get printed.
True.
And that's just how it is in South Africa, because the government is fundamentally a communist authoritarian government. They want communism, they want authoritarianism, but they kind of want it in a more legitimate way. So the ANC, the EFF wants to go full-blown authoritarian. Let's just take everything, nationalize everything, and then they have this pan-African dream where Julius Malema just said this in the week. The whole of Africa needs to have one president, one parliament, one leadership, one army, and that army must be strong enough to face off against America, Russia, China, everyone. So that's Julius Malema's dream. The ANC doesn't have that same dream. They just they want legitimate Chinese level communism within South Africa, along with looting and stealing. So yeah, that's the big problem here in South Africa. And that's why, to answer your question in a long-winded way, that's why I decided to get in on the game, because I realized that there's no one speaking, or very few people are speaking to the ordinary man, to the guy that has frustrations. And I'm just an ordinary dude, right? So I hang out with people, I go to church with people, and I hear the stuff that frustrates them. I hear the stuff that they despise and they can't stand, but no one talks about it. And I was like, well, someone needs to speak. We need to speak, and we need to get the word out. So yeah, that's why I decided to get in on it.
Well, that's good. That's good. See, this is also another reason why I prefer speaking to people on this, the common person, the working man on the street, because they are the people that feel the pinch and the bind of what is happening to them in the streets, in the workplace. Oh, yeah. So that's understandable. So the other thing as well, with regards to the whole genocide thing as well, is the fact that I pick up a lot of the times, like I said just now, with regards to Rob Hersoff or the Colonel the other day. I don't know if you watch Colonel Chris Wyatt. He's very good at his analysis.
Really enjoy it, man.
Yeah, I really enjoy his analysis. He's very good. One thing he said as well, he doesn't really go into details. It's almost as if he's also trying to avoid it. I understand the reasons why, because it can be a bit of a sensitive subject. But he refers to it as, he's analyzed it as a cultural genocide. But
yeah, I think that's accurate.
I don't just see it as a cultural genocide as well. I mean, I'm looking at colored, black, white. Yes, in terms of the white minorities, I will look at that as a cultural genocide. But there is tens of thousands of coloreds being killed in the Cape Flats every couple of years. You see the numbers just increasing. And it is absolutely crazy. So, I mean, you're looking at 20, I think the last count that I checked was just over 22,000.
Yeah.
And that is not even, I don't believe those numbers are even accurate. That is from the SAPS.
It's the South African police. There's not going to be accurate.
So, yes, I don't even think that is completely accurate, to be honest.
No, but to speak to that, because it is a valid criticism, right? That people will bring up. CNN and all of them brought this up.
Yes.
South Africa is a super violent country, and I have no problem admitting that. I live here, right? So I know. But there is a major difference, right? So, for example, when we look at the Second World War, not just 7 million people died in the Second World War. It was closer to like 40 million people that ultimately ended up giving their lives.
Yes.
But we don't count the other, 33 million people when we have, Memorial Days and stuff. And there's a reason for it. Most of the other 33 million died as a result of war, right?
Yes.
And war has casualties. The 7 million we remember are the ones that were killed not for war, but because of their skin color. Very specifically, they were slaughtered because they were Jews, right?
Yeah.
And that's why we remember that, because even if there was no war, these people would still be killed. So when you look at South Africa and we look at the 22,000, let's take the official number, the people that's killed in the Cape Flats are killed specifically by other coloreds in gang violence, right? The Cape Flats is incredibly gang oriented, and it's gang violence most of the time that takes those lives. It's terrible. It's horrible. It should be stopped, and the police can stop it. They're just not doing it, right? The police needs to go in there and start taking these gangs to task. And to some extent, they do have task force and stuff that try to take care of that problem. They're just not spending enough resources there. Then you have black people, and they bring this up as well. Millions of black people are killed in South Africa every single day. First and foremost, it kind of makes sense. The majority of South Africans are black, so they would be the majority of people killed. But they're more often than not, almost always, killed by other black people in what is senseless murder and crime. And oftentimes it is genuinely just murder. So shooting or stabbing and whatever. And that's crime, right? If a white person kills a white person, that's murder, that's crime, that's bad. Then you have this unique type of crime that happens in South Africa. And I call it unique not because it's white people dying, but because of how these people are dying. So first off, if a white person in South Africa kills a black person, and this has happened a couple of times, every single time they get charged with a hate crime, and hate crimes carry way harsher sentences in South Africa. The barrier or it's much easier to convict someone of a hate crime as well in South Africa. So they throw the kitchen sink at it. Not a single person who has committed a farm murder in South Africa has ever been charged with a hate crime, as far as I know. So it's not even a hate crime when a black person goes into a white farmer's house and slaughters them. But if it was a white person doing it to a black person, absolutely that would be a hate crime. Then you look at the nature of the murders. You have stories, and this is something that I know only because one of my family members is a medical doctor that's been called out to announce the people dead at farm attacks because he works in a small farming community. And you have stories of, for example, they broke into the house, they tied up the husband, they made the husband watch as they raped his little girl. I think she was 6 or 7 years old. Then they drowned his little boy, 9 years old, in boiling water. Right? Then they raped his wife continuously, took a cricket bat with barbed wire around it, stuck it into her and ripped it out. Right? And finally, they slaughtered him. And I believe he survived because the bullet didn't quite hit splatter his brains all over the place. So he was able to commit this. That's the nature of some of these crimes. Now, when you look at that and you go, that's horrendous. And it's happening specifically to one group of people in the country continuously. There's not a single farm attack where it was legitimately just walking and shooting and moving on. All of them have these sort of torture elements to them. And then not only, and this is where it gets to genocide, not only are there no special task forces in place to combat this crime, these crimes are not considered priority crimes. In fact, we just saw a few weeks ago, the government denies that these crimes are even happening. Now, one of the stages on those 10 stages is denial. In other words, we have it happen, and the government is saying it's not happening. It's not happening. Now, at that point, you have to go, hold on. You guys are either behind this, and there's one interesting thing that you can maybe fact check. But an interesting thing that sort of happened is during the 2010 World Cup, for the 3 weeks that there was a World Cup happening in South Africa, not a single farm murder occurred. We have had farm murders every single week in this country since 1994, every single week. Yeah. For the 3 weeks of the World Cup, not a single farm murder occurred. And you kind of have to ask yourself, I mean, if this was just random killings, why would they be that coordinated? Now, some people have said, well, they were just watching the football and they were drunk the whole time. So maybe they had other people to kill, some foreigners or something. But at the end of the day, there's just, once you have that, if the government was actually taking it seriously and they were actually investigating these crimes, I think a lot of people would feel a lot better and people wouldn't be so outraged by it. Yes. But it's the fact that they're not doing anything and they're also denying that it's even happening. That to me pushes it to the point where we can legitimately call it a genocide.
I would agree. I mean, personally, I've heard some horrific stories coming out that side as well, from the northern areas of South Africa, and the one lady had holes drilled in her knees and her feet, and it is shocking that they would refer to something like that as just common crime. That is not, if you are going into and what was interesting, I found as well that I don't know if you saw the video of the FF Plus leader, the Freedom Front Plus leader. He went to America with a delegation, and one of the things when he was speaking to at the Hudson Institute, one of the things that he said was that he believes that is more because of hunger and poverty, and I sat thinking to myself, I was like, how can you say something like that if you have people being tortured in a really brutal manner, and then you still make that kind of comment? It's you basically saying that, don't worry, it's okay. You can't say that. It's wrong. And on top of it, of course, he was being interviewed by leftists.
Of course.
He was being interviewed by leftists and everything. So, but my thing is that if you're going to go out there and you're going to speak publicly, speak honesty, speak truth.
No, but
have integrity to say it out loud and stand up for those that are being murdered. I mean, you've got at last, I'm not sure of the exact numbers, but I checked that it is already over 4,100 farmers that have been killed. Since, and the thing for me is,
to be fair, I don't trust those numbers because there's WhatsApp groups of farming communities sharing whenever murders happen in their communities, and those numbers are far higher. But
I would imagine so. But that's just for the sake of argument. What I've been able to find out so far, over 4,000 farm murders in terms of the actual farmers dying, not farm attacks. Farm attacks
much higher.
Is much higher. You're looking at in the region of 20-odd thousand currently.
Yeah. And there's only 40,000 farmers in South Africa, so that's about 50% of farmers have, in other words, been attacked.
That is, I think, at last statistics, that was up until 2024. 2025 March, I think it was March 2025. Okay. That was the last statistics that I saw. I think it was around about 20. That's what I've been able to find out. I'm trying to actually get a bit more detail so I can actually have a bit more of an accurate number. But it perturbed me that you have politicians. It doesn't matter if it's a politician. It doesn't matter if it's a podcaster. It doesn't matter if the thing is, when something this bad is happening, why do your politicians not own up to it and say, listen, this is happening. We need help. What can be done? Because they are being targeted. You can see they're being targeted.
I mean, it's pretty easy. I don't know if you saw earlier today at 3:00, the DA had their news conference after their ultimatum to the ANC, where they effectively just went, never mind.
Yes.
And there's a reason why the DA went, never mind. The DA, in a show of force, gave the government an ultimatum. In the last 2 days, the DA was told very clearly by their very rich World Economic Forum-backed donors, do not blow this up. We're making money here. Things are going well. Because if the DA leaves the GNU, the investment in South Africa comes to a halt immediately. People will immediately draw out. So the DA was given basically a quick talking to and said, hey, you're going to fly right. This is the exact same reason why, and there's actual news articles of this. John Steenhuisen, so far back as 2020, went on and on about farm murders and how bad farm murders is and how the government needs to take farm murders way more seriously, and farm murders is a significant threat to the country. And then suddenly he sits in the White House in front of the president and he goes, well, no real issue. Why is that? Right? Like I can send you the links to all of these news articles where he says it up until last year before he got into the Government of National Unity. And it's all because of donors. That's the same thing with the Freedom Front Plus. They cannot be the ones to break this story. And I think, I don't know if it's just funding necessarily. For the DA, it's definitely just funding. Because there's way too many instances of the DA basically saying something and then making the right choice for rich people in the country ultimately. And I'm not against rich people. People need to make as much money as they can. But, you know, when you see the same party doing the same stuff over and over again, it always only benefits the most elite. You sort of go, oh, okay, I think I'm starting to see what you're doing. But I think it's also a case of no one wants to be the conspiracy theorist, right? No one wants to be the guy that says, no, there is actually a genocide happening here.
Yeah.
And then all the leftist elitists going, idiot, like, how dare you? And that's something that I think the Freedom Front Plus is suffering from. This sort of, they'd rather go, no, it's probably because of hunger. If it was hunger, why aren't they just stealing? I mean, they can steal literally. If you go to any farm in South Africa, farmers don't farm high tech in South Africa. You can literally walk into the fields and take whatever you want. And most farmers will only find out when it comes time to actually, reap what they've sown. So it's like, wait, if it was just hunger, there's a lot of other things that could have happened there.
Yeah.
You don't drill into someone's knees because you're craving a burger. That just doesn't work. So yeah.
I see I'm running out a bit of time here. I just want to get your take on the actual Trump, the delegation that went to the White House. I just want to get your take on that with regards to the genocide thing, because although I see Trump, although he did mention, I know this is some time back now, it's already happened and a lot of people have spoken about it, but I'd like to bring you back for a couple more conversations as well.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
But the whole thing with Trump is I think about the only thing he got wrong was the fact that the white crosses are graves. They're actually not official graves as such, but other than that,
well,
they're there to symbolize the amount of people that have been killed.
Yeah. So every cross, so the crosses that he showed there was part of a demonstration, but they also showed the crosses. There's a mountaintop that you drive past. I used to live in Polokwane, and every month we would drive up to Pretoria to go visit my father's family there. And there's this hill where you can see these just thousands of crosses. Every single one of those crosses represents someone who died. So every single time someone dies in their community or they find out about a death, they go put a new cross into the ground there. So that's absolutely legitimate, right?
Yes.
So they're not graves, right? There's no bodies there, but they are symbols of actual people who died. So yeah, that sure they got him on that, but it is fundamentally still, and I believe even with that protest, people who had lost family members to farm attacks brought these white crosses. So every cross is still linked to a death of some kind. Now, of course, there would probably be a bunch of crosses that isn't linked to death, people who just brought the crosses anyways. But yeah, so it's still, I would say, the spirit of it is still 100%.
Yes. I just want to come back as well to the 10 stages. A lot of the time, especially as we were talking about Rwanda earlier, the fact that they made excuses where Rwanda they didn't know about when it was pretty obvious to the world that what was happening is that I think the whole purpose of the White House situation, what occurred, was for Trump to alert the world before the actual end part of the genocide takes place, where the actual where as this would say your extermination starts, right? The thing is that looking at a couple of the articles here, and I think where's this one article I picked up on from CNN Media, which was written by Dennis. But it actually gives you a list there with the classification, symbolization, and actually takes you through to things where it tells you the symbolization, where they call them cockroaches or settlers or they give them all these derogatory names. So
dehumanization.
Exactly. The dehumanization, the discrimination, and organization, the polar, and it actually shows all of this. But the thing is, personally, looking at everything that's happening in South Africa currently, I would say South Africa is currently sitting at stage 7 minimum, even though I believe the Genocide Watch has not updated their site yet to stage 7. They're still sitting at stage 6 at the moment.
Yeah, I think the problem again with these stages is some of those stages come and go. So for example, we could go and say, well, actually South Africa is at stage 10, because technically the government is denying that this is even happening, right? But then people say, well, what about extermination? Like that hasn't happened yet. And you go, well, so if you put all of this together, I would say South Africa is probably in one of the more dangerous types of genocide, because it really is. It's not only a physical genocide in terms of trying to kill people and drive them off of their lands, but you also have the cultural genocide where you have our language completely being destroyed, being ripped apart because every university is now switching away from Afrikaans. Most of our public holidays and almost all of our public holidays were religiously linked because the Afrikaner people are a deeply religious people. At least they claim to be. So you have those that's been disappearing. And then you have financial genocide, where white people are completely excluded from partaking in the economy. And people will go, wow, why are white people so rich? It's like, well, if you can't get into the economy in any way, shape, or form, all you have left is starting your own business. And it just so happens that we've gotten really good at starting our own businesses.
That's true.
Right. And then when the business gets a little too good, the government comes in and says, well, we'll take that. Right. We want a part of it now. Yeah. So yes, white people are very rich, but it's not because they own the economy. It's because they can't go into the economy, and so they have to start their own thing.
Yeah.
And I do think we have some of the best entrepreneurs in the world, because in all of these horrible situations, we're still able to start businesses. We're still able to do, to do stuff. But yeah, it all three of those things together, you are looking at a genocide. And I think President Trump noticed that rightfully and said, I'm not going to be the president that oversees this, right? I'm not going to be the guy in 2 years' time that has to get on the news and go, well, we just didn't see this happening. Yeah. We didn't see this coming. He was like, nope, I'm going to do it now. And I believe there was a report even from the Security Council of the the European Union that came out that also said President Trump is spot on. There is a genocide happening in South Africa. So you even have now the European Union itself completely rejects it, but the Security Council, or at least the Security Office, they found that there's probably something there.
Yeah. It's very interesting that it's a slow process, but it's very interesting. There seems to be a bit of a shift going on where you're actually having you're actually having the leftists now starting to sort of realize, but hold on a minute, something is actually going on, and they're being found out. The thing is, they will be found out, and when they do, they're going to end up suffering for it.
I think most of them kind of want it, right? The whole, at least from the left here in South Africa, there's a hatred of being white, right? I know some left-wingers that I used to go to university to, that if they could trade in their whiteness and become any other skin color, they would do it overnight.
Yeah,
and my sort of take has always been, you should neither be ashamed of your color nor proud of it. Like, I didn't do anything to earn this. So being proud of it, I'm not sure why I would be proud of it. If anything, the thing that I am proud of is my ancestors, right? And the stuff that they went through so that I can be here today. Because they paid dearly for me to be here. But I can't be proud of my skin color. But then you look at leftists and you go, they hate their skin color. And you're like, well, but why? But hey, that's just South Africa.
Yeah. Okay, we've got a bit less than a minute here. Do you just want to say a couple of things before I get cut off here?
Oh, no. Just absolutely thank you very much. Thank you for having me here. It was an absolute pleasure. And thank you so much to everyone that's listening. And yeah, I'd love to be back.
We'll bring you back again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.